for April 9th, 2019. Everybody had a chance to review those, and if so, take a motion.
I'll make a motion on that. The approval of the minutes from last meeting, March 12th, 2019.
March 9th.
March 9th, I'm sorry.
Ooh. April 9th?
April. Where am I
April 9th. Yeah.
at? April 9th, yes.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the minutes of written for April the 9th, 2019.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak before we start the action items? Okay. Moving on to action items. Ms. Ball?
Alright, we have a property owner, 612 West Washington Avenue. No. Look at it on your screen.
Okay.
The property, he purchased it and it is already, as is. The back fence has encroached on the city's right-of-way for the alley. And there is also a structure in the back, an accessory building in the back that has also encroached on that. Instead of granting an encroachment, I wanted the owner to go through the non-conforming. That way, if we ever do need that alleyway, it does revert to the owner having to be responsible to move that structure and that fence. The fence and structure has been there since 2002 is the clearest picture I could get on Google Earth that they've been on site there. So the owner did list a letter, his wishes. Did you read the letter in the documentation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I did have an adjacent homeowner come in, well, actually both owners of both properties to the sides of him come in, but they don't have an issue. They also have that same encroachment in the back. So the entire alleyway and the entire block has encroached the alley. And there is a whole other alley that has actually encroached properties to the north. So that's why I didn't want to
Can you
grant.
repeat that?
The alley that runs to the north of these properties is actually encroached on the properties that are to the north side of that block. There is an existing
So
alley
you're
with
saying
existing utilities.
All the properties on the south side have encroached into the alley, and the alley
Has
been...
encroached into the properties to the north. That's why I don't want to grant encroachments and basically be giving away property, because there may become a time that we have to fix this problem. And at that time, that's why I want to do the non-conforming. That way, at that time, the owners have to come up to code and move those structures.
Sounds like you need to send a non-conformance to all of them.
Which I'll be working on that. Getting people to come in and file for these things is a different story, but I will work on that. The owner is here. Did you have any questions for him?
If he would like to speak, he's welcome to. Do me a favor, come up and give us your name and...
Hector Villasenor,
property.
612 West Washington.
Okay.
And like I said, whatever she said, it's right on the money. So, like I said, when I bought it, I never thought, to me it looks normal, because I've seen alleys smaller than what we got. But like I said, right now I'm trying to get a loan on it, and the bank, just came up with the measurements, and it came out like we were encroached. But like I said, all the alley is like that, looks normal. So
We did have a current drone shot aerial view, so you can see that pretty much that whole alleyway. It's not like his yard went out further than anybody else.
And with this non-conformity, he understands that he cannot build any more out, or he would be in the encroachment.
Yeah, he can't make any adjustments to those except for to remove them and bring them into.
Bring them
conformity.
back, right, and he
Yeah,
understands
you
that.
understood that one?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And right now, my deal is that, like I said, I was supposed to close on that loan on the 15th of April, and then all this came up. So right now, I just need your guys' permission, so the bank will give me the loan. Like I said, that's all I need. So I'm not planning to build for any further. Like I said, if I have to move the fence, I'll move it. I'll move my shed. Like I said, it's no problem. So.
How many other houses are encroaching the alley? Every one of them, or just the ones on either side of it?
No, all the way down that whole block.
So,
From, well, there's a vacant lot on the corner of Fourth and Washington, and then there's an alleyway, and so the rest of the 500 block of Washington. And I do believe that is 7, 8 homes. Can you tell me your
Is this a portable shed, or is it built
Yeah, it's a
on
portable shed. Yeah.
7 homes?
Like I said, I'm planning to get rid of it, but not, like I said, not right now. Like I said, later on, I'm gonna move it because it's really bad. So
does this drawing show that it's 11 feet encroachment?
Mhm.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
Oh my gosh, so the cinder block wall on the, we tried to follow the rules and not go out and look at it, by the way. The cinder block wall on the south side, was built basically 10 feet short. The whole alley's moved 10 feet.
Oh, yes, yes. All the other fences down that entire alleyway.
So are you saying that that cement block wall's in the right place? Or it's 10
No.
feet
No,
over?
it's in the
Yeah,
wrong
it's
place.
actually reduced those people's yard by 10 feet.
Yes.
It should be in
Okay. Any questions? Anything else you have? Okay. Thank you.
I did have the utility companies go and make sure, lines are actually in the existing alleyway. They're actually not in anybody's property. He hasn't encroached on utility.
So all the new meters we just put in are put in the wrong place.
Probably a lot more than this.
Aren't the meters put into existing spots? So they've always been in the wrong place.
I'm not debating that, but
I just wanted to make sure, I didn't know.
okay. Any questions for staff? So the recommendation from staff is to approve a non-conforming rear yard storage building and fence with binding requirements that modification of the structures to bring conformance or remove at the owner's expense. Did you guys discuss a timeline for that?
It states that that is what is in our code, in the non-conforming code, that it's a binding agreement that in the event infrastructure needs to be worked on in that area, that is when, if he hasn't brought it up to code by then, he would then have to either remove it or relocate it. That's the verbiage there, my recommendation is just straight out. When he has to move it, no, because we don't have any plans to work in that utility easement anytime soon. So that's why the non-conforming also is transferable in ownership. If you remember when we created that, we made it so it would be transferable.
Then you need to come up with another way. Then you need to come up with another way to accomplish this, because I want to prove that.
Okay.
I will be a no vote on that. Just eyes wide open.
Well, I mean, that's just the way we made the non-conforming code work.
I'm not opposed to a conditional situation for somebody that purchased a piece of property. I assume you paid cash.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there was no survey done originally, and, you know, that's the part of the problem, not having title insurance and going that whole route, but that's beside the point right now. I'm opposed to, an avenue that resolves the current situation. I'm not willing to let it continue on. I can easily be outvoted here, but I'm just.
Well, it's up, I mean, this is your guys' thing. I just went with the non-conforming structure, because that's what I have in my code to go by. Because I didn't want to grant an encroachment, because that's actually giving him property.
I agree.
Can't afford to do that.
I agree.
Not in that entire alleyway. So,
I don't want to grant a variance.
I don't want to give a variance. So this was my only other avenue, unless you have a better suggestion you would like to.
What about 60 days, making it conforming?
But then you gotta make everyone in that alley do the same thing.
Whatever we do is going to set a precedence. But we have to realize with that. Any other comments? Patrick, is it acceptable to have a motion that approves the non-conforming that makes it non-transferable, even though our ordinance says it is?
No, because I don't think the board has the authority to overturn, basically what you'd be doing is overturning that ordinance.
So is there a solution that
There's
helps
always a solution.
Yeah,
It's
is
just
there a solution that
the
helps the
time.
homeowner? Is there a solution that helps the homeowner and keeps us?
Well, I guess the way I would look at it is, I think when he comes in and purchases, that there's not any indication to him that this would be something that's out of the ordinary. Especially if you just sight down that alley, it looks like everybody else has fences there. Those fences, the age and condition give some indication that they've been there for a long period of time. So if I were to purchase that property, you know, I'm gonna have a survey done. But if I didn't have that survey done and I just eyeball down the alley, I think I'd probably be in good shape. So I don't think it's something that we need to take a look at the impact on this particular owner, because if we do, then we've got the obligation to go against everybody else. And I'm not sure, based on the view that shows the meters, where we are with utilities. You know, if the actual proper sitting of the alley is 10 feet to the north or south, but we've installed utilities, have we, you know, consented to the fact that, you know, the alley's in a different spot? I don't know. So I guess if the question is, you know, the chairperson's concerned that when this gets transferred from one individual to another at the sale or transaction, you know, what kind of impact does that have? I think that that individual would still be bound by these same terms and conditions. So if we grant it and say, we'll do this type of conditional use, unconditional use, or unconforming use, but you're subject to moving that fence sometime in the future, the next owner of that property would be subject to the same terms and conditions. So although we sort of perpetuate, this being in the wrong place and it not being correct, the city's still in the same position that if it ever needed to make repairs or do some construction work, we're in the exact same position would be with the second or third owner as we are with the first. So there wouldn't necessarily be a detriment to the city, because you still have the ability to do what we would need to do with this property owner versus somebody else. So what we're really looking at is the issue, how the board and the chair feels about this particular ordinance that's in place, and whether we should perpetuate these types of things on a non-conforming use and having it be transferable. So that's really where it shakes out. So is there an easy solution? I think the best solution, in my opinion, and I'm not part of the board, so I'm just giving you my opinion as a city attorney, would be to say, under the circumstances, I could see going with a staff recommendation, and then in the future, making some suggestion to the city commission to review that issue to see if they want to make these types of changes, ones that continue on with the property for owner number 2, owner number 3, as opposed to some other type of arrangement that we have where it stops after that, if that use finishes or the property is no longer owned by that individual. So that would be my recommendation, because we're going to have this again, and we're going to have other people in this alley that probably wanted to be treated. If this gentleman gets what he wants, and we're going to have to treat everybody else in that alley the same way as well. So it's certainly not easy, but that would be my recommendation, is to then review as a whole, not for this particular situation, but as a whole, how does the commission feel about a non-conforming use and its ability to continue on. And maybe the way to deal with that is to have not something as rigid, but give this particular board the flexibility to look at, do we want non-conforming to be on a case-by-case basis? That raises some concerns for me, because anytime you treat somebody different, there's, I've got concerns. But how do you deal with that particular issue? Because there may be non-conforming use issues that were created by a property owner, but I don't think that's a situation that we have here, so it's not easy.
So one of the concerns I have is we now have an ILR out here that says that the fence line is over 11 feet into the alley.
Mm-hmm.
And the structure is about 6 feet, 6.5 feet into the alley. The guy right across the alley has a cinder block fence.
Mm-hmm. When you say across the alley, you mean to the north?
Yeah.
Right?
Has a cinder block fence and realizes that his yard is actually 11 feet bigger. Have somebody come out and surveys it, picks the cinder block fence up and sets it down. Now we have a 10-foot alley.
Yeah, and we're going to have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a number of different things that factor in. But what we would have to look at, when I looked at this one shot, sighting down the alley, it looks like there are meters set inside the fence. And so I don't know, are those meters just set based on how far they are off the fence? Or are they set because there's a line there and their site has to be so many feet from the line? We don't, yeah. So, I mean, if we just stuck them in the ground because they were 2 feet off the fence, I don't know where that leaves us. I don't know where the water line is. I don't know where the utilities are. The utilities could have been put in after some fences were in. I don't know. That's probably unlikely. But yeah, if the person to the north looks at it and says, I've got some extra 10 feet and I want to take it up, we'll have to deal with that. And it may force the issue then.
On the non-conforming.
Yeah, and everybody else down that line.
Okay. So it could be a positive thing, in a way.
If you
Could-
see that as
could
being
even
positive, right.
Well, it evens everything up at the end of the day. Which,
I'm
puts
looking at
everything-
positive, like, not evening things up for people, but what's in the best interest of everybody. If I was that person with the fence, I wouldn't want to move it just to say, hey, I got an extra 10 feet of fence. I'm just gonna live with it and go on down the road and hope everybody else does too. But that's how I look at it. Someone that could look at it a little bit differently. But I think that's the case. We got non-conforming use. If we have to make some adjustments, he knows. And he's consenting to that by asking for this, and that's a condition of what the board is considering. So if the guy on the north or the gal on the north moves her fence 10 feet, then we'll be back in and we'll get it sorted out. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that would be a time when you'd have to bring it into conformity.
Right,
And tell
yeah,
them.
yeah, and then we probably have to look at everybody else down there. And then why don't they have to relocate our water meters, I don't know.
I do believe the water meters are all in the front on Washington. It is only sewer line, gas line.
Oh,
and
gas,
electrical.
gas, okay, yeah, sorry.
That was all that's in there.
So since I wasn't clear at the beginning and told you that when you're done talking, you're done. Since I wasn't clear about that, speak up, go for it.
Like I said, she said we wouldn't have any problems going that way, but now that I see that, you're opposed, well, now I got, I like to say, I like to jump in. Like I said,
Well, I'm opposed.
I'm not asking the city to give me, I'm not trying to bomb on the man. I'm just asking permission. And for any reason you guys have to come in, I'll move my fence. I'll move my
Okay.
shed.
So-
Without a problem, without a problem.
So,
All
and
right,
I believe
all I
that.
need just your permission so I can get my loan, so I
And-
can get a little cash, so I can start doing something on my house. That's all I'm asking you and the board.
And I understand that completely. I failed to remember the piece of the non-conforming, that it's transferable if you sold it. So it's not the agreement we have here, and that's why when Patrick
I'm not
explained
planning
that.
to sell right now,
Yeah.
but when I sell right now, I'm gonna move that fence, I'm gonna kind of, I'm sorry, then I'm gonna build a nice block. That is my plan.
I hear you, and I
So-
appreciate that. I appreciate that. So, does anybody have any other questions for staff or for attorney?
If the fence is gonna be moved at some point when you build the new fence, I think it would, because it is just a chain link fence and a movable building, why not just move it now and be done with it? And then later on in the future, whether he builds a fence or not, it'll never be a question. They're just gonna take up the fence and put the new one down, and it's done, and then we don't have to revisit this. And like you said, that we're setting a precedent, and so when the neighbors start going, why are you doing that? And they can come up and they say, why are you doing that? We actually want you to move your fence too, But I mean, we've already got the code. We're always trying to massage it to do the best in one way or another, and it always puts us in a position of, at some point, we're gonna be playing favorites, or we may not be playing favorites, but it would appear that we are. And if we have the code, let's just follow it, and then it's like Patrick said, then we'll be equal.
Well, one of the things that, with Lovington, it's unfortunate that we're in the position where we are, because there was a period of time when there was not a lot of concern taken about these situations. So when I look at it, I would balance the cost and time to this particular individual to move their fence. And then also, are we willing to go out and make everybody else move their fence also? And so if we're not, I would look at it and say, we have what we need if we have a problem in the future. Is there a real reason to make him move that fence as opposed to grant this? So, there's some considerations there. The other thing I take into consideration is that are we in a worse position with creating precedent than we are today? And that's one of the other things I look at too. Anytime you guys look at something and say, let's say there's a sign that's not in compliance, and you say, well, it's a good restaurant, let's leave it that way. Okay, I might like that restaurant too. So I look at it and say, well, that may not be the best reason for us to make that decision. And how does that impact our flexibility in the future? Does it tie our hands, or does it still leave us open to do what we want to do? In this particular situation, we're not necessarily creating a precedence that we don't already have. We already have our law that says if it's this type of non-conforming use and we grant it, it's already part of our ordinance that goes on to the next user and the next user and the next user. The way we remedy that situation and keep it open for our flexibility to cities is to say to that individual, we're not gonna make you move it now. But if we have to come in, you understand, we're gonna give you a non-conforming use to help you out either in the sale or refinance or whatever that might be. What we want to exchange from you is consent that if we have to come in the future, we've got the right to come in and do this. And so that's part of the quid pro quo that we have here. And so it does two things. One is puts us in a different position if we have to go in and argue with this person or some other property owner about moving fences. And I'm not too worried about that. But I don't think it puts us in a situation where we're creating a precedence that deviates from what our ordinance said. You could look at it and say, our ordinance says if you want to grant a non-conforming use, that non-conforming use sticks with the property, not the owner. And so we're really not putting ourselves, if we granted this today, the city tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, is not going to be in any worse position than if we made that individual move their fence. And so that's kind of how I take a look at it and say, if we make him move his fence, we still have that issue with the rest of the alley. And we still have those problems unless we're going to start working our way down the alley. And is that really to our benefit, depending on where the utilities are? So the situation of creating precedent with this decision, if you approve staff recommendation, is not something that concerns me. Because all we're really doing is following the ordinance. It's just that half of the ordinance that we don't like is that the non-conforming use stays with the property as opposed to the owner. So we have a personal difference with not the application or the applicant or anything like that. We have a personal difference with, and it's okay to have those, right? That's what makes the world go around. It's a personal difference with how that ordinance is structured. And so I would still have the recommendation to approve what staff is requesting for a number of reasons. One is we can go ahead and change that ordinance in the future, but we can't make that change at this level, so we're stuck with it. Two is if we go ahead and make this decision and approve the recommendation of staff, it doesn't put the city in any more adverse position than what we already are in today. So we're not going backwards on something. And three, if we don't, what's going to happen is this individual is going to have to move his fence, move his building. It may not take a lot of time or money or energy, but those are going to be some additional hurdles for this individual to go ahead and get things refinanced. And if we do that, if I was this individual, I would say, well, then I would expect at the next P&Z meeting, there's going to be letters and all those other property owners along the line, we're going to have to deal with it. If it's important enough to move that chain link today, then we've got to look at some of these other more permanent structures along the way. That's just my opinion on it. I think everybody should follow the law and the ordinance, and I'm more of a law and order kind of person than not. But under the circumstances, that's just kind of how I look at that perspective. And my view is not what the same view you should share. You should each have your own particular independent opinions on this. They may be shared with other people on the board, but my view doesn't matter. What should matter to you is how I look at what the current ordinance is, whether we're going to be in a detrimental position if we're creating some kind of precedence, and then the impact on this individual versus our willingness to go make everybody else move. That's a long-winded answer, but I get paid by my words. So.
Okay, any other questions? Take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the non-conforming rear yard storage building and fence with the binding requirements that modification of the structure to bring it into conformance or to be removed at the owner's expense will be required in the event that installation, replacement, or construction or repair of the municipal infrastructure or utilities permitted through franchise agreement with the city of Lovington are required in that area.
That's just trying to say it's written.
Or so moved.
Yeah. Second?
I'll second.
No second. A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. So the
You'll
next
still have
step
to
for
go to the
you will,
commissioners.
this will be presented in front of the city
No.
commission? No? Non-conforming, so no
Non-conforming.
commission?
Conforming, we
Approved
don't.
by you.
So,
Stops with us.
so you're good to go. Crystal will have whatever paperwork you need for your loan.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
I'm sorry, bye.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's personal.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
I'll get hold of you.
Thank
We'll get that, we can get,
Yes.
you gotta get it filed.
Motion to adjourn.
I make that motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Will somebody turn the recorder on?
James?